Joining me now is Matt Tardio. I've already talked about it in my opening today and on radio. The horrific invasion of a church service in St. Paul, Minneapolis, my old stomping ground. The violation of private property. I'm sure by now you've seen some of the footage. Let me play a little bit of it. And we'll have Matt respond to this. Let's see here. Here we go. Watch this.
The Lord is safe in your house. The Tracy, you want to get your house in order?
That is correct.
With a record of heights in St. Paul. Justice for
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good!
Renee Good! Renee Good! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot! Go shoot!
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? I'm not going to comment. You have no comment. Exactly.
Look at that young boy right there crying. Okay? There you go. And we got Don Lemon up in this thing. We'll get clips of him in a minute. Here we go.
Renee Good! Renee Good!
Freedom! We have a duty to We must love and support one another.
All these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No! Jesus would dine with immigrants. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Shame. Out now. Out now. Living real comfortable while the people starve. Living real comfortable while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable, aren't you? Shame on you. Do something. Stand with the Somalis. Stand with the Latinos.
Stand with the Somalis and the billions of dollars they've taken from those very Minnesota taxpayers. You're living real comfortable lives. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? But again, does this idiot, does he even know the Somalis have reportedly taken billions of dollars from those taxpayers? How does he know what they've done ministry-wise for any of those groups he mentioned? He doesn't know. Your comfortable life with your coffee. Well, the guy that's doing the video seems pretty well fed, and Don Lemon is in tow. What did we look up Don Lemon's net worth was reportedly? 24 million, according to one report we read. Joining me now is Matt Tardio. Matt, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
We've got more videos to play. I used to live in the Twin Cities. I know exactly where this is. I'm not from there. I'm from down here, but I lived in Washington, D.C. I lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul for many years. And I know that area, right where they're at. This is unthinkable. That they would crash a church like this and violate the private property. And yet Don Lemon wants to tell the pastor that this is the First Amendment, the freedom to protest. He's on private property. I don't think this would have gone so well if they had tried this down in Memphis, Tennessee area at some of the churches here that I know are very secure. I think if they had tried crashing the churches here, their security teams would have met them at the door, I don't know if they would have gotten in, but I think it would have turned out much differently down here than up there. But to think that this is, Don Lemon thinks this is private or First Amendment right to protest. I'll play some of those clips. But what is your initial response when you saw this?
Yeah. So, I just took over the lead of my church security team, and I'll tell you right now, if that happened in my church,
really?
he gets a verbal warning to leave the property. If he doesn't, I'm going to drag him out physically. So we'll start there. Second, this is not a First Amendment protected free speech. It's not protesting. It's not any of that stuff. You're trespassing on private property. You're disrupting. You're violating federal laws. You're disrupting and you're violating people's civil rights. Don Lemon, it most certainly seems like he had very advanced notice of this beforehand. It looks very well organized. That gentleman that you were playing there up on the screen, that's just shouting and yelling at everybody, being extremely verbal and cursing. That guy himself, he was over in D.C. just a couple weeks ago, and he was walking around shouting at the National Guard and yelling at them for being Nazis. Right, that's that guy. He's a old, claims to be a GWAT war veteran from over inside, I believe it was Iraq or Afghanistan, National Guard combat infantryman or something of the sort. And so he thinks that he's better than everybody else. And he's just going to go around and shout and scream. And I got something else for Don Lemon too. You know, Don Lemon went up to the pastor that was giving that speech, or that was actually preaching that day. He was shoving a mic in his face, asking him in for interviews, asking him about stuff. And that pastor told him to leave the property, or he requested that he leave the property. And I'm not so sure Don actually listened to him and left the property. And what's even worse is Don claims himself to be a Christian. And the last time I checked, you're supposed to do what? Turn from sin and flee, to run? And that man lives, what, a homosexual lifestyle. Sorry, Don, you're not a Christian. I don't care if you belong to a church or not. 100%. It's definitely not a church of the Jesus Christ I know.
100%.
And then we'll take it as, oh yeah. And I can keep going. You know, and he claims all of these, I can go off. Do you know the reason why they were there? They ended up showing up there. Because one of the pastors at that church is also a local director at an ICE office.
Yes. Now, that's been in the media. And of course, as the day's gone on, it's now being confirmed by more and more outlets that he is connected to ICE. I confirmed it this morning. Okay. I went over, I checked out the church's profile, and he's got his name, his picture up there. It's over on my X account. And then I went over, and there's a video where I believe it was Pam Bondi was actually speaking over there, and he ended up falling right behind her. And it, sure as day, it's got his title listed right up there on the screen underneath him. And that is exactly why, that is why they went there. And this was pre-planned. It was organized. And the two ladies that were behind it as well, at least in my opinion, I think they're the two ladies that were behind it, also had advance notice of this. So while Don Lemon is catching the brunt of this in the media, I don't think he's going to get away with it. And I don't think the people that organized it are going to get away with it either. It's just disgusting to me. If there aren't charges filed, we got a real problem, because we have patriots and Christians that were thrown in federal prison under the FACE Act that we've reported on here for a few years, simply being out in front of abortion clinics, praying. They didn't do anything to obstruct. They were just out there praying, and they go to federal prison. You know about those stories, right?
That's right. And Donald Trump ended up acquitting them, if I remember correct.
Yes, thank you, President Trump.
And this is where the Assistant Attorney General, Dillon, she's going to have problems, right? Because she's got to go to a federal court, but she's also got to go to a federal court there in state in order to get these warrants for these people. And so she's got to go to some of these judges that are over there in the great state of Minnesota and get them to sign off, albeit they are federal judges, but she's still got to be able to go over there and get them to sign off on their warrants so that they can go start picking these people up on the streets. And the most frustrating part, and it's one of the messages that she's been pushing all day, was that if the Minnesota Attorney General or the local police or any of the police for that matter, county sheriff's office, anybody, actually could be doing their job and taking care of these people and prosecuting them under state law. You don't have to wait for the federal government to do it. And I know they would do it. I guarantee you, I know the local authorities would do it, because if I got together with 5 of my friends and walked into a mosque and did the exact same thing and started shouting the names of the soldiers that got killed over in Washington, D.C. not that long ago, I bet you I would be in handcuffs in no time flat.
I think you're right. Here is some more video of Don Lemon. Listen to this, guys. Here we go. Let me unmute it. Here we go.
Shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here.
Okay, wait a minute. What do you say? I'm being very respectful. Who's in the control room? That audio is a little
I was being
hot.
very respectful. Please don't push me.
Exactly.
No.
I said earlier today, the pastor would have had every right to have body slammed him, in my opinion, and cuffed him and done a citizen's arrest right then.
If it's a felony, sure. So citizens arrest for felonies all day long. When you start talking about misdemeanor charges, which if Don Lemon's story holds up, he's still criminal trespass. The moment the guy tells him to get off the property and he doesn't leave, he's still trespassing. He's still trespassing. So he's got the right to drag him off, and I mean, it's appalling to me that Don is trying to hide behind the First Amendment on public property, bringing up the fact that they have a right to protest.
On private property.
Yeah, they're on private property. On public property, you have a right, right? But so the law is kind of odd in this way, right? So if a location is open, it's welcoming to the public. So take most people's porches, for example. You can walk up to somebody's porch and knock on the door. Now you're on private property, but as long as the easement's open for other people to go, then they can go and walk on your door. They're not just automatically going to get arrested for trespassing. Much like a church, right? The door's open to the public. People can walk in there. But the moment they're disruptive, they get asked to leave for any reason, they are then trespassing. So they got to get a warning first in a place like that. So after he's given that warning. Now, it's much different when it's a house or if the church doors were locked or if it's beyond business hours, then we have a whole other discussion to go into. But because it was open like that, Don's got to be told to leave. And that is assuming that he's not taking part in the broader scheme of things that ended up going down at that church.
Here is Don again outside. Here we go. Oh, Leon, mute it. Here we go.
And, I imagine it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. But again, careful. It's very slippery right here. Yeah. It's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here, but that's what really, careful, please, really slippery. Not kidding. That's what protesting is about. And so.
Okay. Traumatizing. And we've seen the picture, one of the pictures of a little boy being consoled by, I guess, what is his father, like, there we go. That, I would probably, if I was that dad, be bringing legal action. And I would try to add Don to it because Don just admitted this can be traumatizing. So how much knowledge did Don have in advance that this is what was going to go down?
Well, there's videos of him standing in a parking lot beforehand, speaking with people. One of the ladies who I believe likely ended up organizing this, he's giving an interview with her. And he states that they are keeping it kind of a secret for what they're going to be doing. But when he manages to jump in his car, what I read was he ended up asking his driver, you know where we're going, right? So somebody had to have told him where they were going. Now, Don just claims that he was following the crowd into the building. He had no idea what was going on. So he had to have known that they were going to a church. And I think what Don's going to try to claim now, because that information came out, is, well, I mean, maybe I knew we were going to go to the church to protest, but it was going to be on the sidewalk. I had no idea they were going to bust into the church and start doing illegal activity. But the problem is ignorance of the law doesn't matter, right? So Don clearly thinks that what he's doing is legal, but ignorance of the law doesn't matter. And two, that doesn't seem like what their goal and their mission was. Now, all of the people that were inside that building, right? And one of the ladies in particular that I talked about, she was also filming while she was in there, stated the reason why they were inside of the church, which was because of the pastor that also works for ICE. So if that's the case and they knew about it beforehand, that church was targeted for that specific reason. Everybody else knew it. And Don even interviewed the woman that I'm talking about. So it blows my mind that he wouldn't have that information.
Wow. Here's Don again today.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice.
Well, we know that because I think, again, Don's a homosexual who has a, quote, marriage. So obviously he has his own brand of, quote, Christianity, which I don't think lines up with the Bible.
It's not Christianity.
No.
It's not Christianity. I'm so tired of these fake Christians. Him and that guy, Jake Lang, too. Jake Lang's also a fake Christian, just FYI for your visitors. The guy that ended up getting the crap kicked out of him this weekend over there.
Yeah, we don't ever let him. We've had him once. I interviewed him once. When he was in jail, figured out the deal, stopped doing any interviews with him several years ago.
Yeah, I'm tired of these fake Christians. No,
here's the rest.
It's not Christianity.
but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. Poor Don is suffering from such a lack of freedom that the poor guy has only been able to amass reportedly a net worth of 20 million. The guy is so oppressed. He lacks so much freedom, but he has a word for it.
Absolutely, 100%. But it's an intimidation tactic. And
says the guy who I think was just involved in an intimidation tactic, in my opinion.
I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
You're a gay black man in America, but I think you wanted to become a face of this. I think it is clickbait. And he said this is white supremacy. Wow. I mean, the guy, how is he managed to achieve a reported net worth of 20 million if America is such a racist, horrible country?
Yeah, there's only one person I heard injecting race into this entire situation, and that'd be Dawn. All right, that would be Dawn. Further, I got a question on to how Dawn even knew to show up there at that location and knew that it was going to be worth his time to stand around and wait. Because let's apply some critical thinking and common sense here. Why would Dawn Lemon, of all people, show up and just stand around hoping for something to happen with this random group of people? Why would he do that? He even said he thought he was in the wrong place because he saw an American flag and he thought, oh, these must be MAGA people. No. Don knew exactly what he was doing there, in my opinion. He knew exactly what was going to happen, in my opinion. And I think the evidence is certainly suggesting he's going to point to that. And I'm pretty confident that he's going to end up getting charged for that. Because this is a gross civil rights violation. If they don't charge him for this, think about it. If they don't charge him for this, they set a precedent. They set a precedent. If they don't charge those protesters and they don't charge Don, they set a precedent. And that precedent is anybody can bust into a religious place of worship and do exactly what they did, and not be charged for it in that state.
Here's Don again.
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because it's a assistant attorney general, I don't know, gosh, what's her name? Something Hammett, Dillon or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea.
All right. That's not journalism to crash a private worship service. And that's activism, I think. And it's not free speech. You don't have the right to do that, as we've already said. And so to claim that he has that right is ridiculous. And when he was asked to leave, I didn't turn around and see him say, okay, boom, I'm gone. He continued to press the point.
His understanding of constitutional rights is about the same as his understanding of Christianity, I would say.
So, again, we're going to see what the administration does at the DOJ. Do you think the DOJ will do anything about this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard the AAG Dillon coming out saying that they are going to be seeking charges and that their biggest battle is going to be those federal courts in that state, that they have to go get those warrants signed in. Now,
I am going to deal with this in another segment with Annie Cyrus, but I don't know if you know this. I went to the church's website. And again, I want to make sure I am not in any way justifying what these folks did. But I did go to the church website today to try to figure out, okay, what's the church? What's their theology? What's going on here? And I went to their website. There it is, Cities Church. Okay. And I went to the bottom of the page, and there is the promotion for John Piper's 80th birthday party. Now, I don't know if you know who John Piper is, but I've written about him in my book from 2018, Marxianity. This guy promotes basically replacement theology. The promises to Israel are canceled. Apparently, he doesn't understand the difference between the Mosaic law and the Abrahamic covenant. Apparently, he doesn't know because he doesn't finish the verse in one of his studies. He quotes Romans 11 about they are enemies, but he doesn't finish the verse in Romans 11. But for the sake of the fathers, the promises are irrevocable. That's in the New Testament. For those who are saying, well, where are the New Testament verses? That's Romans, that's New Testament. And that's the Apostle Paul, who admits in Romans 11, he is a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin. And he's saying, no, these promises are irrevocable. Yet I got sermon after sermon by guys like John Piper promoting what I think is clearly replacement theology, denying their historical and biblical right to the land. John Piper saying Christians shouldn't own guns. The best way to keep from killing someone and then they die and go off to hell is just don't own a gun. And then he promotes Black Lives Matter and how we shouldn't criticize Black Lives Matter. And then he defends taking the knee. And he works with the Gospel Coalition, which has promoted white privilege, basic incomes. Pastors, tell your congregation members, tell your pastors or tell people to vote for Hillary Clinton during that election. They promote all reparations. This is the leftism being promoted by guys like John Piper. And what I am admonishing this church is this. When you have this happen to you from the leftists, the progressives, the Marxists, the cultural Marxists, the Saul Alinsky agitate to the point of conflict, whatever this crowd is, okay? One day they're wearing keffiyehs and I'm worried about Gaza. The same group of actors a lot of times I'm seeing are appearing and now on this. Okay, when you realize this is happening, my admonishment to this church of what happened to them, I disagree with strongly. I will continue to defend what happened to them as being wrong, defend this church. But I am warning them, stop promoting leftists, and I believe that's what he is, men like John Piper. You cannot Christianize the left. That's why I wrote the book Marxianity. You cannot merge Marxism with Christianity. You shouldn't be promoting guys like David Platt, Matt Chandler, promoting white privilege and talking about how they have this basket they can go to, this tool, because they're automatically white. When you promote this kind of thing within the community of Christianity or evangelicalism, you're giving it oxygen. And you're adding to their numbers and a credibility. And it makes it very hard then to come out and say, no. So my admonishment, I don't know if you know anything I'm even talking about here, Matt, but this is why I've been writing books for years against the left from the Christian perspective, whether it's Religious Trojan Horse in 2011, The Coming Religious Reich in 2015, or Marxianity in 2018. Because guys like John Piper, who this church is acknowledging on their website and celebrating him, is part of the problem. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of look at things like that the same exact way I see what happened to Jake Lang. Jake's running around spewing blasphemy, in my opinion. And when you have a church that's promoting false things, such as that, under the guise of Christianity, I don't think God likes it. And it wouldn't surprise me at all that things like this end up happening to them. Now, I don't condone the actions of a single one of those protesters, but I certainly hope it causes them to open their eyes and take a look at the violent individuals that they are promoting. That's my thought process on it.
So you and I are in agreement. And when I think what you're saying too is tell me if you agree or disagree. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you.
Yep.
When you start to disobey God, his hand of protection starts to get removed.
Yeah, it's not even that his hand of protection starts to get removed. When you start to disobey God, I mean, what ends up happening most of the time? Discipline. Because sometimes it's not even the hand of protection. That's right, discipline. You know, you're looking at a father disciplining their children. And to me, that's a lot of the time what ends up happening to a lot of these people is they start to drift, they start to go away. They still maybe in their heart of hearts want to be Christians, you know, and God will pull you back. God will correct you. God will make your life miserable. Trust me, I've been there, you know. So I would suggest that they get in line with proper theology.
100% agree with that. Very troubling, very troubling. I'm afraid it's going to become a pattern, and I hope more churches will become aware of this and get the security. And I'm so pleased to hear that you are in charge of the security at your church. And it really makes me question whether this church had any security that this group could storm the doors. And here's the thing too. Remember, we had not too long ago a shooting. Was it not at a Catholic school? And I think some people ended up being killed and gravely horrifically injured. So how do these people know when people start storming the doors like that and coming in, if one or two of them isn't about to do something that puts everyone's life or physical well-being at risk? It makes it very hard for church members. And that's, again, where bad things happen, because people are caught by surprise and they fear for their life or safety. And I think churches better pay attention to what just happened, be aware, know that groups are coming or could with their cameras in advance, where they have a camera crew, where their cameras are sitting, and they got a guy in a back room somewhere who's monitoring all the cameras, 360, who's coming onto the property, what cars, what caravans, talking to their security guys in their ears. Hey, a group of 5 or 7 cars just pulled up together. Something's happening. I mean, churches and synagogues need to get ready. I mean, we've had plenty of warnings. I mean, I guess this is the kind of thing you're talking about with your church, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Jews got a saying, they'll say, first they come for the Saturday people, next they come for the Sunday people.
We quoted that. I quoted that on radio today. So I'm glad you're doing the same. Explain to our audience again that saying.
Yeah. First they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people, right? It makes it palatable, right? When you're desensitizing people to these different actions. And we've seen for a very long time, the Jewish community has been attacked, since October 7th. I can't even quote to you the percentage of increases that the Jewish community has had. I was shocked to learn when I was going through the law enforcement academy years ago. I was shocked to learn that Jews are like the number one, according to FBI statistics, most affected hate group in America when it comes to hate crimes. Number one most affected group when it comes to hate crimes. I could have sworn by all of the media and stuff that I saw when I was in the military that it would be, African Americans or Asians, something. I don't know. No, Jews. 100% Jews. And we've been desensitized to that over the years. When you look at the campus protests and everything else taking place. And so, yeah, I think now it's to the point where you're going to have people coming after churches. And by the way, in the state of Texas, I'd have to go look up the other states as well. But, when it comes to mass shootings, churches are the number one targeted locations. So to me, security of the church is a very big deal. It's a very big responsibility, and people need to take it a lot more seriously. A lot of the times they'll focus in, or maybe you'll have somebody that's armed inside. You got to pay attention to what's going on outside. You got to be able to stop these things before they actually end up happening. Got to be able to recognize the threats before they end up emerging. And I'm not saying they did any mistakes. I haven't been over there. If they would like some help, I'm more than willing to go out there and help them. But this is just appalling that they did that. Absolutely appalling.
Well, I would like to know if they had any security, but if they did, my guess is they were overwhelmed. And you can see why they would be.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people. But, that's where your crisis action plans come in. That's where you see people like that. You start putting things on lockdown, and you have plans, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go about broadcasting different plans, or maybe what I would have done, because personally, I don't want the enemy, because let's be real of what they are, to know that. That situation could turn extremely violent really quick. Mm-hmm. That man that was in that video screaming is very, very unstable. Very unstable. He's been doing that for a long time. And so it's important to have competency, not just in firearms, in de-escalation, and more so, in physical protection with your hands. Mm-hmm. I learned a hard lesson many, many years ago, and I got my nose broken over it when I was going through some training, which is hands are faster than a knife, and a knife is faster than a gun, and a gun is your last resort. Not always, but most of the time. Right. And so if you're not training on all those,
say that again, that line.
Yeah. Your hands are faster than a knife is faster than a gun is your last resort, not all the time, but most of the time. Right. So being able to recognize those things, and every single one of those things is a tool, being able to recognize what tool you need for the appropriate time is crucial. And you got to figure it out in a split second. So it's not something where you just have somebody welcome it on into your, church security team and say, here's glad you carry a firearm. Oh, you got a concealed carry permit. Great. That's not it. You got to teach these guys and gals proper de-escalation. You got to teach them to be confident in what it is that they're doing. People respond to confidence a heck of a lot more than they do, somebody being very nice to them. You can be nice and you can still be confident and get these problems solved, and make sure that you have proper alert taking place and everything else. So there's a whole lot that goes into it. And like I said, I mean, if that church in particular wants help, I'd be glad to come out and help them. But it troubles me, the direction that the United States is going. I mean, did you even think about that? The number one targets in Texas for mass shootings, in public gatherings, churches. That's insane.
It is insane.
Absolutely insane. And it's only going to get worse now. It's going to get worse.
It is. And I want to commend those young men, by the way. I want to commend the pastor who stayed so calm. Mm-hmm. And I want to commend the young men when that guy was shouting at those ladies, like you live a comfortable life with your jewelry and your coffee, and those young men jumped up and went over there and said, hey, and got between them. I want to commend those guys. That's the right thing to do. And they did the right thing. But again, I'm not a lawyer, but I do know and have read the laws in our area. And there are various forms of assault. And when you start getting up into people's faces and shouting at them, even if you don't touch them, that can be a form of assault. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. And that's why I tell all the people on our team, whenever someone wants to get into an argument with you, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait so that you get upset and it rises to you becoming angry, and then you turn around and get in their face, because you can be charged with assault even if you don't lay a hand on them. And I don't know what threshold that is in the Twin Cities, but I would, if I were those folks in that church, I would be looking at having that guy charged with assault, particularly for going up to those ladies and berating them like that. Again, I don't know what would be the trip for that, but these guys got to be these people need to understand at that church, assault doesn't have to mean you put your hands on somebody. Agree?
No, I agree. And you also don't have to wait for somebody to put their hands on you before you defend yourselves. Right. So look up your state and local laws, look up some of the court cases that have been out there for some case law on this, and judge for yourself. But in most states, all right, it's judged on something called the reasonable person standard when it goes down to self-defense. Right. So, if I was to punch you, for example, that's an assault. OK, but an affirmative defense to that assault would be self-defense. Right. I.e., yes, I assaulted this man. However, because a reasonable person would have perceived a threat in this case, his defense was justified in assaulting him, right? So your affirmative defense to assault, self-defense. Same thing for shootings, stabbings, things of that nature, right? Point being, if a reasonable person, a person of you, right, your background, your understanding, your feeling at the time, if somebody of your background in that situation would have felt that this individual, like that guy flying off the handle, yelling, screaming, getting in their face, fingers in the face, it goes a split second to go from here to here. You don't have to have somebody up in your face like that. That within itself is a threat. And if an average person of your background would perceive it as a threat, then it's a threat. And that changes too. It changes for, picture an old woman in a wheelchair versus me, retired Green Beret. So old woman in a wheelchair, she's got a much higher likely chance of being injured, robbed, mugged, assaulted, right, than I do when it comes to being able to defend myself. So that old woman's going to get judged different than me. Same thing when it goes for a young boy. Your parents in the church over there, men, it's time to be men. If you have people getting up in your child's face, that is a reasonable concern. That is a very reasonable concern. And your child has every right to feel just as safe as you do. And as a parent or as a reasonable adult, you have every right to defend that child from being assaulted. Mm-hmm. So remember that. Look into these laws and study up, because those things absolutely matter. You don't have to take this crap lying down.
It's very interesting all you said there. I don't know if you teach classes on this or open for people consulting you, but you obviously have studied this quite a bit.
I used to teach this stuff, yeah.
Wow. You mentioned me personally. This is one reason why I don't go out a lot. I get people make fun of me because there are people that will run into us in town and say, I thought you moved out of here 10 years ago. I thought you lived in Branson, Missouri. Because that's where we hold our national conference for so many years. So they assumed I moved there. I have friends from high school, one that ran into a friend of mine recently and said, oh, no, he lives outside of Memphis. And they said, oh, I thought he lived in Branson. So a lot of folks think I live in Branson, Missouri. But I run into people in town who are like, I thought you moved out of the area 10 years ago. That's how low of a profile I keep, that even people that know me very rarely ever see me. And one reason I don't go out a lot in public is because of what you're talking about right now. When people come up to you, you don't know, are they coming up to you and you don't know them, they're approaching you. You don't know what they're coming for. Oh, I love your show. Oh, I recognize you. Or I hate your guts. And you're like, oh boy, what's coming? You don't know. And when we had a gunman from Sioux Falls come to our conference, walk into our conference, a gunman, right? And it's on video. And then Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all these groups put threats against our buildings in 4 out of 5 cities. And when you read some of the emails and the text we get, and some of them are triple X, the sexual violent text or emails and voicemails. This is why a lot of guys, you public figures, don't go out a lot, because you don't know. And as soon as they try to bait you, now you're in legal trouble. And I'm just saying, it's home for me. If I'd been in that church service and one of them approached me, I'd have to be wondering, are they doing this because I go to this church or because someone on the church staff? There are different people in that church who do different occupations. They don't know if they're there after them. They could be a police officer. They could be a prosecutor in town. Any of these churches you go to, there are people in those churches that do those jobs. They don't know if this crowd is coming in there because they know now and are hunting people.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely correct. You have no idea what these people are doing. None. And when you talk about people coming up, approaching you, when you talk about, especially when it goes to that raging violence, like that one gentleman was showing inside that video, when it comes up to things like that, you don't know what state of mind they're in. You don't know if they're on drugs. You don't know if they have sharp, pointy objects hiding on them, because I guarantee you somebody in that church did. They might have things that go bang. The biggest thing to me, like in that scenario, is to remove that, right? Because a lot of people end up relying on those different objects. A lot of people rely on pulling things out of their pockets or pulling out a weapon. And so for me, it's closing distance. And it's making sure that I have a good reactionary gap to where I can physically react to that individual, but at the same time, right? If I need to back away, I can back away. But if I need to close, I can close. You got people in there with cameras. How many times have we seen people live streaming mass shootings? How many times have we seen people live streaming just smashing somebody's face in? I'm not even talking about some of the mass shooters or things like that. You can look at gang violence in some of these areas, and you can see people doing the exact same thing, right? Up over in New York, there was a situation like that not too long ago. And it was a father who just got the living crap kicked out of him in his front yard. With a bunch of, it was like a streetcar racing gang that just beat the crap out of this guy. And so, no, you need to stay on your toes at all times. You need to make sure you're capable of defending yourself, and also understand what types of threats these look like, right? When you have 5, 6, 7 people that are threatening violence against you, look at that and say, is this a lethal threat? Am I about to, and it's not just lethal as in loss of life. You got to understand most of the language within the law says, great or serious bodily injury, right? So you're talking about major bones being broken, being hospitalized for life, things of that nature, right? That turns into a lethal force situation. You have every right to defend yourself, every single right to defend yourself in those situations. So, and again, it's on a case-by-case basis and a person-by-person basis. I would have a hard time pulling out a firearm and defending myself against 3 people in a court of law if I ended up pulling the trigger on one of them. However, like I said, an 80-year-old woman in a wheelchair, if she's getting mugged and she's got multiple people threatening to beat the crap out of her, we might be looking at things a little bit differently depending on the situation. So look this stuff up, guys. Know your laws, get behind them. And again, men, step up and start being men. Don't allow people to overrun your church. Don't do it. Don't allow people to do things like that, because the worse this situation gets and the more they feel like they're getting in control, the more they get you corralled, the more all of this stuff starts happening. You don't know that somebody, that's holding up that camera is waiting to get this message out before they pull a trigger. We see that stuff a lot in the different extremist videos when they end up putting it out. They've got a message, they've got a statement, they've got things that they want to make, and then violence ends up occurring. You also have the other side where they immediately come in and you get immediate violence. But when you have, decent groups of people like that taking over, you can have hostage situations. You can have things like that occur. Don't be a victim. Do not be a victim. You have every right, especially on private property, to make sure that that property and your safety and the safety of those that are around you is maintained.
We just saw, and I put in the Worldview report tonight, 3 men murdered in Florida by a guy named Jihad, who I guess had already been involved in other stuff and was let off on an insanity defense. And he killed 2 brothers and another guy. And the authorities are saying there was no confrontation. They had no contact with the guy. The guy was he's nuts. But he was allowed back on the street, and he just murdered 3 people that had rented a house in Florida. And we're not even supposed to be there at that point, but due to a car breaking down, had to stay longer. And so even people you don't know, who don't know who you are, we just have a lot of mentally ill, deranged, demonic people. You have to be aware, situational awareness all the time. You can be attacked, stabbed, shot, and the person doesn't even know who you are. They don't care who you are. They're deranged.
The guy that the loudmouth guy in the video that was in that video, guess what? He was arrested the day before and he got let back out on the street.
Follow him, folks, at AngerTab on X, at AngerTab. And you have a podcast too, right, Matt?
Yes, sir. Speak the Truth podcast.
Where can they find that?
Primarily over on YouTube.
Okay. Just type in Matt Tardio and they'll find it?
Yeah, Matt Tardio, Speak the Truth podcast. You'll find me.
All right. Excellent. At AngerTab as well. I'm sure you'll link them there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks for being with us tonight and for your service.
Thank you.
Matt Tardio checking in tonight. Folks, do you appreciate what we're doing? The news we're bringing to you, the information. I even stopped to plug product tonight other than just like tell you, here's the website, go to it. But I got to mention it because we're brought to you by you. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you for your support so we can keep pushing it out for free, not putting any of this 24/7 stream behind a paywall, which many groups do, by the way. Not only that, we put the individual interviews up online each day, next morning. So do that, please. And then, of course, don't forget about the Elixir, Bella Grace. You'll find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. The Numi, the glutathione, all of that, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. The Gatatana, 1 scoops, 90 billion, equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. It's all there. I take those 3 things every day. And Dolly gets half a scoop on her food with the Gatatana. So check it all out, folks. We need your support. All right? We'll be right back.